My name is Cherry Barrow, and I'm the head of client service and partnerships at Global Rev Gen. Today is our first session for Let's Chat, where we unearth and discuss anything and everything digital. Today I'm joined by our very own Director of Accounts and Strategy, Antoine Lessier. Welcome. Good morning.
Thanks, Cherry. Good to be with you.
Well, I wanted to discuss three things, basically. So the first one is the iOS 14.5 update and the impact it has in the market overall. And the second topic that I wanted to discuss is Facebook and the changes it has recently. And the third topic is really about an overall digital media landscape. What do you predict? And the short-term and long-term future of it all.
Sure. Lots to unbundle
I
there.
know. Yeah. Let's get started. So, as someone who's very close to campaigns and implementations and strategy and the reporting and insights, what is the iOS 14.5 update? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Obviously, there's been a lot of talks about the iOS 14.5 this year for good reason. So, just in a nutshell, what it is it's obviously a new version of the Apple operating system that has been rolled out in April this year, on the 26th of April, actually. And the change, I guess, that is brought forward for us is the introduction of a new framework by Apple, which is called the ATT, so the App Tracking Transparency. That's the name of it. And what it does is it's a privacy framework that is obviously Apple has been working through a round of privacy first sort of initiatives, and that's one of their latest initiatives. And what they've done through this is to, I guess, force app developers and app owners to request permission from their users if they're going to use the IDFA. IDFA is an ID which is specific to each Apple user, each device. IDFA stands for Identifier for Advertisers, so it's specifically used for advertising purposes. And so the ATT, what it does is it requests or it requires app owners to request permission by the users to use that IDFA for tracking purposes across third-party apps and sites. And what in practical terms, what it is each user will have a prompt showing when downloading or first installing an app, which requests whether that user sort of permits the tracking to happen or not. If it doesn't, if the user doesn't allow for the tracking to happen, then that app owner is not allowed to use that IDFA for tracking purposes.
Got it. And what do you think the impact is or supposedly have for brands and marketing managers?
Sure. Obviously, as marketers, we rely on data for everything from targeting to profiling audiences, from measuring campaign performance. So anytime there is a potential loss of signal like this, it potentially has a big impact. I guess it's not the first time that we lose signal, that we lose data, right? When we look at cookie blockers or people that are clearing their cache and their cookies on browsers, that's all instances where, as marketers, there's a possibility of that signal being lost. What the ATT did, though, is it introduced a new mechanism for this to happen, and a mechanism that's very specific to Apple devices, which in some instances, in some parts of the world, are the predominant device. And the fact that the opt-in, opt-out prompt mechanism that I've described before is an active mechanism that really puts the user at the center of their decision making. That, I guess, the likelihood or the prediction early on was that a lot of people would be opting out of tracking. And from that standpoint, the loss of signal would be bigger or larger than what we might have seen with other initiatives, sort of privacy-first initiatives that have happened in the past. That was really, I guess, the challenge. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that because the ATT is in place and people have opted out of being tracked, that there's no signal whatsoever that is being transmitted. They are still, so Apple, at the same time as they've introduced the ATT, they've also introduced a range of other, frameworks, and one of them is called the SK ad network, which is a protocol that allows for tracking without the use of the IDFA. So that's in a sense try to give something to advertisers so that campaign measurement and targeting can still happen. It's not a one-on-one solution like the IDFA is. It looks at aggregated data and sort of bundling data and delaying the feed of information between the platforms. But it's still a solution that sort of provides something to advertisers. And I guess one of the big challenge for us this year is been not just understanding the implications of the ATT on our campaigns, but understanding what each publisher and ad platform would do to accommodate this new framework. And some, a lot of publishers and platforms have simply just adjusted their own processes, protocols, algorithms to accommodate that new framework from Apple. But others like Facebook have taken more drastic measures by sort of implementing pretty big changes to their ad platforms and how us as marketers and advertisers work with the platform. A couple of changes, just to name a couple. They've reduced the detail of their reporting, so we cannot really access breakdown of conversions anymore in Facebook. At the sort of market country level, at the creative level. So they've reduced that visibility for us. And they've also reduced the number of, conversion events that an advertiser can optimize for. And again, that's to tie in with the framework of the ATT, which is about bundling information, is about delaying information. And Facebook had to sort of make these changes to accommodate that new framework. And obviously that has big implications on how we manage campaigns, how we set up campaigns, and how we measure campaigns and can report, campaign performance to our clients.
Okay. Now, when we're looking at it globally, though, the iOS market shares are not the same in each country. So what do you think that means? What impact does that have in terms of practical terms and advertising in each of the different markets that has varying, market shares of iOS?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. I think we work with a lot of international education providers in Australia that are looking to recruit internationally, and the fact is, as you've said, that the Apple foothold is not the same across all markets. If we look at, let's say, India and Pakistan, which are two of the, if not the two largest markets where we advertise on behalf of our international education provider clients. Those countries have typically very small iOS penetration. We're talking less than 5%. Compared to a market like Australia, which is higher than 50%, it's a huge difference.
Wow, that's a big variety, isn't it?
It is a big difference, yeah. Having said that, does it mean that we sort of cannot expect that the iOS update, the ATT update, would have an impact on our international campaigns? I wouldn't say that, right? 5% is still 5%. It still can make, sort of show shift in performance metrics when we look at campaign performance. And if anything, the changes that I've mentioned before, for example, Facebook introducing those quite drastic changes, they're changes that are applied across the globe, right? So we still need to accommodate these, we still need to navigate these, but there is a clear difference across different markets. And I think for international marketers, it's something that we need to keep in mind. The same way that we can never really apply a sort of one shoe fits all approach when advertising internationally. We need to look at the makeup of each of our markets. We look at, I guess, the audience behavior, their media consumption patterns, and iOS is just one part of the equation. And we need to navigate that. We need to understand if it does have an impact, try to quantify that impact. And that's an exercise we did very early on in January this year, before the ATT came into effect, where we looked at campaign data and tried to sort of forecast the possible impact that it would have on our campaigns. I think every international marketer should keep that in mind, that it can have very varying degrees of impact across different campaigns, and just not necessarily just globally versus domestic, but depending on the type of campaign that we're running, depending on the channels that we're using, all of these will play a part in the ATT being a big issue or not for marketers.
Okay. And now, speaking of impact, it's been rolled out for about, say, what now, six months? And have you seen or noticed any different or impacts to the campaigns itself, to the digital campaigns that you're running?
Well, interestingly, not as much as we expected. So, I mean, again, we as I said before, we work with a lot of clients that require us to run international campaigns, and so from that standpoint, as I mentioned before, India, Pakistan, those large markets don't have as much iOS market share. We didn't expect as much of an impact. But even looking at domestic campaigns, and we run a range of domestic campaigns too, we expected a big impact, a drop in performance. We haven't really seen that yet. So we actually tabulated all campaign data, and I mean, we see fluctuations as we normally see, but nothing really that we can pinpoint to it being the impact of the ATT. And I should say that other providers, other agencies, other I guess media agencies have noticed an impact. We just haven't seen that on our conversion campaigns yet. We did see impacts, but not to the scale that we expected. And I guess one of the examples of the impact that we did see is, we knew from the introduction of the ATT that there would be a limitation introduced on targeting, right? That was one of the things we expected. On the size of audiences, especially audiences like lookalike audiences, and the effectiveness of that. And that's an impact that we've actually seen in practice. A couple of our campaigns saw massive increase in cost per lead, pretty much a month after the introduction of the ATT. And when we looked at that, we realized it was really a couple of audiences that were lookalike audiences that were creating that shift or creating that drop in performance. And those audiences were based on a pretty small pool, which means that, I guess, Facebook trying to make its algorithm work to find lookalike of that source audience struggled, because the source audience itself was too narrow. And the effect is that we had to shift our strategy to more of an interest-based targeting, and we had to discard those lookalike audiences. So there has been an impact. It's just not the sort of big scale, big performance drop impact that we were expecting. But we should also say that the transition is still happening, right? The ATT happened back in April, but obviously new versions of the iOS come in, people get the chance to upgrade to new iOS versions, and we expect that more and more people are going to be on the iOS 14.5 and above as time goes, and more people will get the opportunity to opt in or opt out of being tracked.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in part 2, where we'll cover Facebook and its recent changes. I'll see you soon.